Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the World Travel Market Airline Series. This is the second of our airline seminars today. I hope some of you were able to come to the one this morning with Joseph Ferradi of Wizz. The title of the session this afternoon is New Leaders, New Strategies, New Directions, because the airline industry, of course, is an industry that goes through regular change, either voluntary or quite often involuntary. But we have three businesses with us today who are making very deliberate and conscious changes to their strategy, already showing good indications of success in what they're doing, and three very experienced members of the airline community to join us in discussion. We've got about an hour to chat. There will be chances for you to ask questions. If you have a question later on, just stick your hand up. We'll get a mic to you. It's quite hard, I've realized, to see you up here with these bright lights. And I should say, in case I forgot, my name is John Strickland, so I'm going to be chairing the session. So let's welcome our guest to the stage. Starting on the far right wing here, we have Chris Brown, who is CCO of Tues Aviation. Chris is well known in the industry, and indeed, I think you were here yesterday, Chris, as well, weren't you? Joining Chris and another regular, I was going to say maybe veteran of the world travel market in a previous life, we have Paul Simmons, who is CCO of Flybe. Welcome again, Paul, in your new capacity. And Peter Bellew. I think, Peter, you've been before, but I didn't know you've actually been up on stage before.
Yeah, I think I sadly admit this is my 30th year coming to World Travel Market.
My God, so, you should have a badge.
I obviously came when I was 5, you know.
You should have a badge of honour. And Peter is from Ryanair, so a really good mix of speakers this afternoon. So welcome to all of you. I gave you a quick introduction there, but can I just get you to also a few little CV words about your life? I've just found out that Chris, Peter knew each other. They practically grew up together, so we might hear a few of the personal stories later.
You should actually tell them what he said.
No, I'll leave it to you.
No, it's all right.
Chris, tell us a little bit about your background.
Gosh, where do I start? You better stop me, John, because when my husband asked me what I was doing today, I said I was coming here to speak, and he goes, "What about it?" He said, "Yourself." He said, "Oh, your favorite subject." So it was a long time ago when I started in this business in aviation, and I think there's once you start, it's very difficult to leave. Probably most known for the 10 years that I spent in Iberia, and I do remember one of the managers there saying that, well, a woman joining the airline business, as far as he was concerned, kids should be pregnant, barefoot in the kitchen, but I seemed relatively intelligent. I could wear his shoes. So 2 years later, I had his job. And then I had the great job of being the youngest, the first female, and the only non-Spaniard to run Iberia all those years ago, which is now history. And then I did a stint in retail and distribution, and was lucky enough to be called after 9/11 to ask if I would come and run Air 2000, which was a really challenging time for the industry, as we all know. But there's nothing like a great challenge to turn a business around. And then, fast forwarding to 7-8 years ago, I was asked if I would merge the two businesses in the UK to form what is TUI Travel. So that was a merger of First Choice Airways and Thomson Fly at the time. And that was a tremendous turnaround, great success and a great opportunity to do that. And then just recently, I've been asked if I would look at the 5 airlines that TUI now has in Europe, and try to actually make them more successful as we are. So that's me.
I think you got the job. Thanks, Chris. I may come back to a number of points in your experience there as we go along. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, slightly different profile. First part of my career was not in travel. I started off in marketing and FMCG with Procter & Gamble, and worked for 2 or 3 different FMCG companies, including Kellogg's, both in the UK and in the US. And I got into travel quite circuitously. I was a headhunter called up one day and said, Intercontinental looking for a global marketing head with no experience of hotels. So that was the pitch. So I thought that's interesting. So I actually went along, and it was really interesting. That's how I got into travel. So after Intercontinental, I then did a stint in India with Oberoi Hotels, looking at the very upscale Asian chain, for those of you who know it. And then from that, in 2006, I became head of marketing and distribution for EasyJet. Again, a fairly kind of a move from luxury hotels to a low-cost airline, but it seemed to work. And spent 7 years at EasyJet, the last 5 of which as UK director, just really growing the UK part of EasyJet and growing out some of the overseas bases as well, including things like the Russian expansion, Israel, Egypt, and those kind of things too. Great time, lots of things launched. I did the launch of Speedy Boarding, the first kind of bag charging, which usually gets a hiss when I mention that, and some of the other things which ended up contributing, I believe, to EasyJet's success. Then, rather strangely, a lot of people at EasyJet, I decided to leave just over a year ago now to go to Flybe because I just really wanted to take on a real challenge, and the airline was fairly challenged at that time. And since that time, we've been busy trying to focus in terms of what it actually stands for, what it is, and to turn it around and give it a real purpose. And I think we've started that journey. The first step is good. Obviously, the next steps will be the real proof of the pudding, but so far, so good. But it's been great fun.
Great, thanks, Paul. Peter.
I always wanted to be in travel. That's all I ever wanted to do. From the first time, I think when I was about age 11, I flew in a 727 from Dublin to Las Palmas, and the smell of the aviation fuel got in my nostrils. That's what I always wanted to do. Went to college in Dublin, but really, as I was there, wanted to work and travel. Started working for the Irish government. They had a CIE Tours, still a very successful company. They had an office in London doing coach tours and holidays around Ireland. Went on to start up for a hotel chain in Ireland, a company called Drive Ireland, which did holidays direct sell, which 26 years ago was very unusual within the UK, packages from England to Ireland. And actually 24 years ago, as part of Drive Ireland, we did a deal with Ryanair, a very young Ryanair, to do Ryanair holidays in Ireland.
That was prior to Michael O'Leary coming on board.
Actually, it was just somewhat prior to Michael O'Leary, so, but it was just around the time that they opened that Stansted Airport actually opened. That was hugely successful, actually, that program of inclusive tour holidays. I think in the first year we sold about 14,000 passengers. It's funny that the world is coming full circle because Ryanair would probably end up doing something like that again in the next couple of years. Went on from there to work in regional airports, had real fun with a very small regional airport in a place called County Kerry. Farn 4 Airfield, as it was known at the time. The local people raised £6.5 million sterling at the time, which was matched by the EU, and they built a 2,000-metre runway, full nav aids and everything. Took that from no passengers to nearly 400,000 passengers in a couple of years. Had really great fun doing that. Worked for myself for a while in holiday property development, and was involved in some IT-related travel companies, and then was finishing up, had sold that, and actually bumped into Michael O'Leary, who I knew because he had sued me as part of a court case to do with Kerry Airport. He'd actually, a year previously, had a bench warrant out for my arrest, which, as I was living in rural Ireland, I managed to evade because the local sergeant called me and he said, Peter, I've got a warrant for your arrest.
What did he want you arrested for?
It was to do with, he wanted to give evidence which he thought might be in Ryanair's favour at a Supreme Court case in Dublin. Okay. So it was non-criminal, but the local sergeant, he said to me, will you be at the house at lunchtime? And I said, why? He says, I have a warrant for you to appear at this court case. And I said, well, I don't think I will be. That's good, I'll call out at lunchtime then. So I went on to get offered a job by Michael. I worked in operations in Ryanair. Just about a year ago, I got given a job with Michael to be head of sales and marketing. And we've obviously had a tremendously successful year with the whole change in approach, the whole actually doing professional advertising, doing the whole sales and marketing and starting our CRM program. It's been an enormously successful year for us. And we've built up a whole new team of people. It's gone from a team of about 6 or 7 people up to nearly 70 in the sales and marketing, digital marketing department. And just 2 weeks ago, I got promoted to Director of Flight Operations, which the largest international scheduled airline in the world is a pretty interesting job with 400 aircraft coming in the next couple of years.
Okay, thanks very much. I don't know where the sound is coming from. It sounds like there's some building going on outside or something. Chris, let's come back to you. You talked about, you went through the process of merging Thomson Fly and First Choice. Now we're seeing changes again, and you've been asked to effectively manage the operational side of all the airlines in the TUI group coming together in a more united way than it's been in the past. Give us a sense of perspective of the size of TUI, because starting from Thomson, because Thomson's perhaps the best known here in the UK, give us a sense of the scale of Thomson and tell us a bit more about the rest of the group and what they do.
Just to put it in perspective, I mean, there's just over 60 aircraft in the UK. And I suppose unlike my colleagues here, we're not just an airline, we're part of a vertically integrated business, which we're very proud of actually. And that's making sure that we look after the customer journey from end to end. So we do not do a lot of seat only, at all. It's all about looking after our customers when they choose to spend that very precious money with us on holidays. And that, in the UK, of course, it's about 62, it's about 6 million customers. As we well know, the Thomson brand is well known and loved in the UK. But then if you go across Europe, it's about 140 aircraft, so it's a substantial fleet. It's all Boeing. In Germany, very well known and very well trusted brand. The Tues brand is very well known there, less so here. And apparently it's the second best known brand to Germans after Mercedes itself. So it's a hugely popular brand and very successful. And then we've got markets in Belgium, in Holland, and in Scandinavia. Overall, the business carries about 30 million worldwide. And we've been a very successful business for the past 5-6 years, or certainly since the merger, and going from strength to strength. And I think that's not just about moving metal. It's about making sure we put the customer at the heart of everything we do. It's about owning the hotel beds. It's about knowing what customers want and investing in that whole experience with us.
So you really are a very integrated airline
Totally.
group. And we should perhaps just mention, I mean, just in the last few days, there was news that TUI AG in Germany and TUI Travel have merged. And we're not really talking about, if you like, administrative, organizational details here, but just to explain that, what's the reasoning behind that?
Well, effectively, it makes total and utter sense. It's of no impact to the UK operation whatsoever. Simplistically, it's two head offices coming together, two corporate, and it's a great opportunity for us to actually streamline the business and do a lot better.
And you mentioned the parent group, the name TUI, and we see the the smile on the tail and all the advertising logo. But in the UK, of course, if we go back to Britannia Airways and more recently Thomson Fly. Was a low-cost operator that you had in the group, and then that was folded back in again. But Thomson is a name that you could say is known and loved here.
It is.
Will that name stay, and will it still be identifiable as an airline in its own right as part of this restructuring?
Absolutely no plans to change that whatsoever. But there is a lot that we can change. I mean, let's be honest, if you were to start, if my colleagues were to speak, and I'm sure they will, if you were to start an operation today, you wouldn't start with 5 different airlines all over Europe, would you? So that is a result of having done business a certain way. But you alluded to it, times change very, very quickly. And if you don't change in this business really quickly, then you very, very quickly become, extinct.
And did those 5 airlines, we know that Thomson came out of Britannia, and TUI was a long-standing German tour operator group, but how did the Scandinavian and the Belgian and the Dutch bits come into the fold? Were they acquisitions over time, these different airlines?
Absolutely, and we're going back almost 50 years here with some, and they're all very, very different. And they've all at different stages in their development and their career. I think the huge advantage that we've got is that there is so much experience and expertise of how not to do things, as well as how to do things better, that we can now, take advantage of that and certainly make sure we do that over the next 12 to 18 months.
And how do the actual markets differ? Because I'm familiar, obviously, with the UK market, a large focus on sunspots, short haul and indeed long haul. Germany, I believe, has very much the same affinity with holidays to Spain and the Med that the UK market does. But what about Scandinavia and the other companies? Have they got any particular differences?
No, John, actually, they're remarkably similar. People just want to have fantastic value for money and a great holiday. Destinations are predominantly the same. There's a lot more seat only in Belgium than there would be in any of the other destinations. But our ambition is quite simply to become the best holiday airline in the world, and we can actually do that. And that is our aim. I think the other thing is, when it comes to operational expertise, we introduced, as everyone well knows, the Dreamliner, 787 Dreamliner last year, and that had its challenges way back then. Yeah. Very much worth it.
Are
you saving on that one? Sorry.
Save that up for just a few moments, Chris, because I know you'll be ready to
what I will say then
lyrical.
Is that what we have learned, we can then share with the rest of the group, colleagues. And make
on
sure
that aircraft.
Absolutely.
That's an important point.
And that's paying off loads.
Just trying to bring out these differences because, I don't know how familiar people will be with the group, but one thing that I seem to recall is you have this airline, Corsair, who in France, who at one point, I don't know if it's still the case, were flying 747s. High density, mainly on short flights, but one sensible bit of economy of scale of a TUI group was they would use these aircraft in the winter to go to Scandinavia, where there's a big demand to fly from, say, Scandinavia to Thailand. Was that kind of part of the rationale behind what you're doing now?
As anyone in aviation knows, and especially in our particular market, we need a lot more aircraft and a lot more crew and a lot more assets in the summer than we do in the winter. No surprises there. People tend to go on holiday in the summer. But for the past, it's probably for the past 10 years now, what we've been trying to do is look at counter-cyclical markets. And Canada has been particularly successful for us. We put a lot of aircraft and a lot of crew over to Canada, in the winter. We own 49% of a business over there as well, which has really been really successful for us. And Scandinavia is a cracking market because we can put aircraft and people over there in the winter when there's less demand for it.
Because in Scandinavia, they go a lot down to places like the Canaries in the winter in a massive way compared to the UK. And what about Canada? Where do they go there? Is it Caribbean,
it's the Caribbean.
Mexico?
It's effectively 2 weeks from Canada, escaping the very cold winters up there, down to 2 weeks in the Caribbean. Yeah.
So there really is a lot of potential there to improve, as you say.
It's been really successful, and we do a lot of regional airports in Canada in the same way that we cover about 21 airports in the UK as well.
I mean, just reflecting on what you're doing, I mean, we've had news in the UK recently that another long-standing British carrier, Monarch, has just been saved, you could say. The original investors getting out and new investors coming in. And they've suffered historically from this very seasonal peak travel. And they've said they're going to get out of long-haul travel. Now, you are actually going to be moving more into long-haul travel.
Yeah.
Why would one airline be coming out and you getting in more?
I can't comment on Monarch, obviously, but for us, it was very, very simple. It was deciding where we could be number one or number two in the market. It was where can we add value? Where can we acquire the aircraft at a cost that is going to still allow our customers to have good value for money holidays? And it was sticking to what we know best. And that, there was a time when people said that, the package holiday is dead. Well, I think that has been well and truly challenged. What you have to continue to do is offer incredible value for money and give customers something that they can't buy elsewhere. And thankfully, having the strong brand in the Thomson name has been fantastic. I always remember, if I dare go back to do you remember the ash crisis? That was it was so difficult in one respect, but it was tremendous for us at the same time, because we thought, gosh, this cost us a fortune, to actually make sure that we looked after everybody. And I was thinking it was hundreds of thousands all over Europe and getting them back. And we did everything we could between aircraft we couldn't deploy, obviously, because the skies were shut, but it was like planes, trains. We did everything to get our people, our customers home. And I thought, I wonder if people will remember this, because you thought, Kenna, it's okay now. But there are customers, a few of them said, Thomson, no, they get you home. So there's something about the brand that is really strong. And ever since that, I think when it comes to buying, it's different if it's just a flight. But when you're spending, 2 weeks of your very precious money with your loved ones, you want to make sure you get it right. And I think that when it comes to tough times, people go to brands that they trust, and thankfully they've trusted us.
That just makes me think of a bit of a digression from the theme. You talked about that ash cloud and the problems it gave for airlines. I'm just going to bring you all in out of sequence of my thinking, because there's been a change now in regulation, or there's been a legal case won by passengers trying to claim compensation for delays. I think it was particularly Jet2 and was it yourselves who were affected? And this seems to be some of the papers are championing it as a great, move for consumers, but this is surely going to be a really challenging for the industry. I'll just bring the other guys in at the moment. Peter, has Ryanair been looking at this issue?
Yeah, it is
paying
tough.
Compensation for delays over, what, a 6-year period?
It is tough, and it's quantifying the depth of it, and then dealing with the whole intricacies of it. And obviously, we carry nearly 90 million passengers, so the scale of what you're dealing with is enormous. So I sometimes think the way that these things are dealt with, people miss the devil in the detail in it. So it's going to be a challenge. But again, it's just, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. The barriers to entry to aviation are enormous, and it's just another challenge we're going to have to deal with and move on. These things take years and years and years, and there's limited appeal in some cases anyway. So we just have to get on with it. We're dealing with regulatory frameworks in over 30 countries now, and every single one has a complexity in it that you cannot even believe the depths. And actually, we're tending to see over the last few years, rather than there being one unified approach across Europe to any matter, be it even within aviation regulation or consumer regulation, actually countries are separating more and more and more, I think, since the last financial crisis, because if they see an opportunity to try and make a few bucks out of any foreign-owned company, they'll go after it. So it's very tricky.
Paul, does it affect you equally? You're more domestic focused, but flights get delayed, and there's history at Flybe itself in the past flew some non-UK flights, or a larger number of them today. What does this change in the legal landscape mean for you? Is that a challenge?
Well, I think like everyone, we have to follow the law and adhere to what's been decided, but it patently doesn't appear to be very fair, particularly for a regional airline like ourselves, where a lot of the time we're competing against surface transport, who doesn't have the same issue in terms of the penalties if the passenger is delayed for whatever reason. So I'm sure that on many routes, which are widely competed routes, the fee for this or the cost of this will find its way through to the passenger. So I don't think it's the passenger boon that some consumer journalists are making it out to be, because eventually it will get passed on. I think for us it's harder to do that when if your prime competitor on a route, say, is the train, who doesn't have the same issue. Then it really is a barrier. And so we'll be making our concerns known. How far that will go, we'll have to see. But in the meantime, we'll certainly do the right thing by following the judgment. But it is patently unfair.
I think it doesn't support the regions either, because if you take the difficulty, if you take a regional airline across southern Europe, into the eastern Mediterranean, those countries, they tend to have less than 30 aircraft, maybe even fewer than that. They don't have spare aircraft. They don't have a big spare parts provision. So, if it's cancelled, it's cancelled. With an airline like ourselves or the other two, my colleagues here, well, we carry 4 or 5 spare aircraft every day. We've 300 aircraft. So if a problem arises somewhere, you have a chance to recover it. But really, the people who are going to get hammered by this is the really small regional airlines, who I think they should be trying to encourage.
So it could actually force some of these airlines out of business, basically.
Like, it's going to make life very difficult for them.
Chris, I've not forgotten you want to get your moment about aircraft. I'm going to make you wait a little bit longer because I think there's a lot to say about aircraft for all of you. Paul, do you want to tell us a bit more about you've been recently at Flybe, as you were saying, just about a year now. Tell us quickly, what sort of state of health did you find the company in when you came? If that's not a leading question, I don't know what is. No. And how have you been treating the patient?
No, I think it's no secret to say that last summer, Flybe wasn't in such a great shape. Essentially, it's a great company, a lot of great people, but it just kind of lost its way, particularly in terms of what it stood for. So, it's been a subject of mergers and changes over the period. So a lot of people were ex-BA Connect and operating a bit like that. Some people who had come in from Flybe wanted to be low cost, and so there was a lot of people trying to be low cost. Meanwhile, no one was really looking at cost, which is ironic. And so it was a case, and a lot of the routes didn't particularly make much sense or much money. And so you had a network which was part regional, part flying to the sun in regional aircraft, which is not the lowest cost way you can get to the sun routes, and no real focus on what the airline should be. So without getting into too much detail, essentially what we've been doing over the last year or so is defining what we are, which is, in our definition, a regional connecting airline. So we connect point to point, and we connect onto other airlines. So we've been doing going to additional code share partners, particularly long-haul carriers, to get you either from region to region or from the region to the world. We're in 36 UK airports. We fly to nearly 70 around Europe. We've got about 100 aircraft and about 7 million passengers. So in terms of what we do, we are the largest in Europe. But I think the key to what we've tried to do over the last year is defining what we are and what we're not. And so once you say we are a regional connecting carrier, and that's what we do, you suddenly start to get some traction. And so we've managed to recapitalize the business in the city in terms of, based on this strategy, we've managed to get the business to a trading break-even, stroke small profit from 5 years of losses. So it's kind of on a reasonably solid platform now. We'd like to take it further, clearly. But I think the secret is understanding what you are and why you exist. And we often say that if Flybe didn't exist, someone would have to invent it, because someone's got to do these thinner regional routes. Someone's got to do the thinner regional connecting stuff, and we do that. That's our day job. That's what we do now. And the other part of our business is white label flying for regional services for former flag carrier. So
what does white label mean, Paul?
White label means that we fly, so take Finnair, about a third of Finnair's total volume is flown by Flybe in Finnair colours, but with Flybe planes and Flybe crew, flying their regional connectivity into Helsinki. So they're doing that at a lower cost than they could do it themselves. We also have a much smaller but long-standing relationship with Brussels Airlines, and we're in conversation with a large number of other airlines to do similar things. So we've defined this as a twin-engine strategy, a branded Flybe operation which we see growing around Europe, and a white label operation providing regional services to flag carriers who need connectivity.
I saw an interesting quote from your CEO, Saad Hamid, where he said, we're going to have a much more rigorous approach to growth, no more seat-of-the-pants voodoo management. So what does he mean by that? What kind of voodoo management was going on before, and how have you changed that?
Yeah, it's essentially, it's having a rigor to business decisions, from particularly things like route assessments and when you launch a route in the first place to just a general hard rigor on trading, a weekly, daily look at route by route, what's performing, what's not performing, corrective actions. That kind of into the details of the numbers approach, which maybe wasn't the case before. So it's not, unfortunately, there's no kind of rocket science to convey apart from just really focused hard work and rigor on the big decisions you make. In any airline, the big risk or the big game is, big money is going to be made on capital deployment, where you fly, when you fly, how often you fly there. And so having a strong rigor about that is the key to success in this game, and some of those controls weren't there in the past.
And one big change we've seen as a regional airline, it looked like Flybe, and I can't remember the timing of this, was before you and the new team came in, but Flybe sold its slots at Gatwick to your former employer, in fact, to EasyJet, and it looked like you were exiting the London market, but now you've come back. I mean, only last week you were here, just next door to Excel, launching 4 or 5 new regional routes into London City. What's the reason for coming back? Is it a complete repositioning from what we saw before at Gatwick?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, I was involved in the purchase when I was at EasyJet.
Right.
So anyway, having switched sides, clearly being a regional, if you say you're a regional connecting carrier, you have to connect to the capital. Over 50% of our passengers are flying for business, and they're on short trips, and therefore the most convenient, we need to get them to the most convenient airport so the total travel time is minimized. It's fairly obvious. So one of the first things I did when I came in was starting to look at London City and analyze the routes and the structure. And fairly early on, we decided that that was going to be our London point. And we've just 2 weeks ago launched 7 routes into London City, and happy to say they're going very well. So that's part of the strategy, to connect business passengers into the most convenient London airport.
And in terms of, again, the regional strategy, is it a challenge or an opportunity to compete with a train? I'm thinking not only journey times, but the whole issue about the tax approach. There's no APD on trains, but there is on planes. I saw even you upset one of the rail companies by giving away free tickets outside of a railway station in Exeter. They called the police, I think.
Yeah, that's funny. Had they not called the police, we've got no publicity. It was great. I think the thing with the train companies is that they're not used to competition. So all we were doing was hanging around Exeter Station, if you hadn't seen us online, handing out free coffee and pointing out we were the fastest way and the cheapest way to get to London. And they went, they got very upset and called the police on us, which was fantastic. That's what we wanted. By the by, it's just about offering strong competitive reasons for people to, in this case, modal shift, getting off train to go to the plane, because you have to offer something which is tangibly better. We are tangibly faster. It takes 50 minutes rather than 2.5 hours, and it's cheaper. So why wouldn't you? And so we're just making that point, and they weren't used to competition.
And do you think people will take up your offer in sufficient numbers that you're going to turn the business into a sustainable, profitable business for the long term?
Well, we are already sustainable and marginally profitable. I think the issue for us now is in terms of we have a growth agenda, we have a pipeline of aircraft coming into the fleet, and it's making sure that we have very managed growth and very focused growth in terms of looking at the numbers as we do grow out. But it's certainly a model we think can expand not just in the UK but elsewhere in Europe.
Great, thanks for that, Paul. Peter, Ryanair, you were in the news yesterday, incredibly strong increase in profitability for the first half of the year and revising up your expectation for the year as a whole. We've seen Michael O'Leary around exuding, as far as he can, niceness and saying that certainly other people who are prepared to be more nice than himself in his company are changing the perception of Ryanair, that Ryanair is genuinely different. The results seem to be suggesting something is working in that change in the first few months. Yes. Tell us a bit more about it. You said you were very involved in this last year.
Yeah, like I think there was a tremendously nice company bottled up, willing to just escape out of the bottle. The changes really came from the ground up. Annually, the company has a European Works Council event. Sometimes it's biannual. I was at the last two. Michael was there. And, you know, well over a year ago now, the staff said, listen, we just have to stop this with the bags. We had, you know, the baggage police. If you were getting on board a Ryanair aircraft, before you even got near the gate, almost when you were gone through security, there was people trying to grab your bag off you and tackling you and charging you extra for that. So now you can bring 2 free bags on board a Ryanair aircraft. In fact, hardly anybody looks at the size of your bags at all. So half of the world's population, thankfully, are ladies. Most of those never wanted to travel with Ryanair because they couldn't bring their beautiful handbags. And a lot of people across Europe, when they travel, ladies, they want to bring their best handbag. They were hiding them under coats. They were hiding them behind their backs. And we were forcing them to put them in. So the second free bag was a huge thing. The website being changed has made an enormous difference. It was quite a technical challenge to make a booking with Ryanair over a year ago. You had to have some persistence and some web skills. Endless pop-up screens would come up and you'd have to close them. Now it's gone. It's 5 or 6 clicks to make a booking. We've put significant investment in server capacity, in speed of connection through to the website, and we've also launched a first and an improved version of an app, and we'll soon have a full mobile version of the website. I think the mobile side is going to be incredibly important. If you look at the results from Facebook last week, 66% of all Facebook's traffic in the last 3 weeks have gone on mobile devices, as opposed to 20% 2 years ago. And we're probably seeing that as, I haven't looked at the TUI site on mobile. Actually, Flybe were way ahead of everybody in having a really well mobile-enabled website to make bookings some time ago. So the website, the second free bag, and I think generally our staff have just chilled out a bit on board the aircraft. Interesting thing you see about that is certain countries where we wouldn't have had a good consumer perception was in Germany, and our highest rate of growth percentage new customers has been in Germany this year, which we can see is people giving us a second chance. They're saying, okay, Ryanair says they've changed. Let's see if they have actually changed. And we know now, because those people that travel with us who are new customers this summer are already booking with us again for next summer and also for winter breaks. Another big thing we did was often our summer schedule wouldn't have come out until Christmas. Christmas week was the first time you could have booked a Ryanair flight for the following summer. It's been pretty much on sale since the middle of August this year for all of next summer, and that has made a significant difference to advanced bookings. And then the culture internally, that the Chief Marketing Officer has been appointed. That's the first time we've ever had that. That's a direct report to Michael O'Leary. Also a Chief Technical Officer started a couple of weeks ago. We built a Ryanair Labs facility, which is in quite a sexy part floor, separate to the rest of the company, but in the same building. We're hiring in a vast number of very experienced people. We're fortunate in Dublin that there's European headquarters or Middle East headquarters for Google, Facebook, LinkedIn. A lot of these companies, a lot of the expertise is available to us in town. And they're iterating now new applications, new travel services, and we have that on a very, very aggressive timeline for release. So you should see by next spring, next summer, some very interesting new developments.
I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and they were saying that on this type of development, you don't really see a return on investment for maybe a couple of years, and that given Ryanair's focus on results and return, might that not lead to a bit of a conflict, that will be internal frustration? You've recruited all these people, but no tangible result for a couple of years or so.
But we do it at Ryanair speed, which, you know, we kind of operate in a parallel universe of everything has to happen at warp speed. So if Michael says it has to happen, it has to happen. And no stone will be left unturned to make it happen. I really think a lot of the development of travel across the internet in general, and I have been involved in travel on the internet for 20 years now, it's a little bit like a house where somebody moved in some new furniture about 15 years ago. Maybe a little bit of the furniture has just been moved around, but there's actually been very little new development, new product, new presentation of travel on the internet. If you still take it, if you take a Thomson brochure in the UK, it's a much better experience to buy a travel product than any anybody has out there on the internet at the moment. So I think we all need to improve, make it much easier, make it much more integrated for people to be able to buy something. And we see in Ryanair that it's just not good enough anymore, that people are kind of having to ferret around and grab bits of products from all over websites and all over the internet. There needs to be far better integration of that. And we see that will be helpful to customers. And I don't see why it should take so long for things to develop. If you take an old-fashioned approach and set some deadlines, it should work. You've also talked about getting more business customers, but yes. Historically people talk about Ryanair flying to secondary airports. Do you think you really kind of get the additional business customers that you're looking for? Well, if you look at, you've been moving some more mainstream airports. We opened in Brussels Zaventem last February, and everybody said, "Oh, Ryanair, nobody will ever travel with Ryanair at Brussels Zaventem," and we started hitting 90% load factors within weeks. We're opening in Cologne, but you'll also see we've aligned our business schedules. We've up to 3 and 4 or 5 return flights a day from Stansted to mainstream European capitals now, to the main airports in Barcelona, in Madrid, in Cologne, in Athens. And that type of connectivity in Bergamo and Ciampino in Rome, and that kind of connectivity, we've realigned our schedules. You can now get out and back in both directions with Ryanair. We've offered a business fare. There's a very inexpensive premium over our normal fare, and you get a fully changeable ticket. You get extra baggage space, extra lengths. And that was really popular from day one. We were taken quite by surprise. We thought that would change. And the biggest surprise, I think, of all for me was, I had thought it would take maybe a year or 2 years before we'd see some change in perception in the European media towards Ryanair. But literally within 3 or 4 months, when we started extending the hand of friendship and reasonable behaviour, I would say, people gave us a second chance. Is that because you've been keeping Michael more out of the way? Well, I don't know. If you actually measured the column inches, I think he's somewhat misunderstood. Right. Possibly he said things just to wind up some journalists over the years when he didn't really mean them, but they made good headlines and they got reported. But he's fully embraced the move to the whole digital future, and the intense interest that he has had on day-to-day operations over the years. I tell you, there are few enough people in Europe who know more about the way code is developed and the way applications developed than Michael does. He's taken a deep personal interest in it, and he's actually working harder than I've ever seen him work. He's just signed up for another 5-year contract. Yeah, but I can't see him ever leaving, and he's taken out in a coffin, perhaps. But hopefully not. But I think, in essence, the enthusiasm that he had for the industry has almost been reborn, and he sees it incredibly exciting, the way that the industry itself could integrate back through digital means the whole customer experience of buying a holiday, buying travel. It's a little bit messy at the moment, the internet. It's a little bit scattered, and I think TUI has a great opportunity, I think, to bring things back together again, and the integration. Well, let me just we have as well. I'm sure you could wax lyrical for a few minutes or a few hours more, but let's just ask Chris, what do you feel about that? I mean, you've had a few compliments there from Ryanair about what TUI has done. Is that something that you as a business were looking at maybe a few years back? Because if I look at your position again, and I'm not asking you to compare and contrast, but we've seen very different experiences in recent years between TUI in financial success and Thomas Cook.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was really important for us was to decide, as I said earlier, is where can we add true value to what customers really want. When you look, I mean, the low-cost carriers, credit to the guys, they've done a tremendous job at changing the way that we travel, and so many people travel now more than they used to do. For us, it was deciding what we were good at, what customers wanted to buy, and making sure that we got that right. And I think we stuck to that. We took all the big, tough decisions early, I think, as well. We made sure we got on with delivering the results, and we never took our eye off the bottom line, ever, in terms of, making sure it was a profitable business. And
have you sort of focused also on things which bring a bigger margin? The old idea was a brochure was on the shelf and you sold it, piled it high, sold it cheap. So that is very much thing of the past.
It's interesting, actually, and I'm no expert on the distribution side anymore, but what is increasingly obvious to us is that people interact with us in very different ways. Whether it's online, whether it's through our shops, or even over the phone. And I don't think that we can tell customers how they wanted to buy our product. We have to make sure that we're relevant and you know, there and available when they want to buy that holiday from us. And we find increasingly people will do an awful lot of research online, but then when it comes to parting with the cash, they want to speak to someone. They want to speak to someone who's been there. So, you know, whilst we thought a while back that, you know, everyone said that, you know, the high street is dead, it's certainly not dead for us. On the contrary, there's a great interaction between all the channels that we use. What you have to make sure is that those channels are relevant and cost effective, you know, and it moves, you know, and it's fantastic. You know, at the end of the day, there are so much, you know, when you're selling a holiday, there's so much part of that experience is the research you do up front as well. And what we've been able to do from a hotel point of view is making sure that the videos are there. There's 360-degree tours. You can actually enjoy, you know, browsing and
yeah, I was surprised. I mean, even preparing for this today,
and that'll only
you've
get
got
better.
some videos there that you
Brilliant.
can watch, give you little visual summaries of what
that
you're
will
up to.
only, I mean, with them, we've a lot of new developments coming online, and that will just increasingly get better and better and better. And the good thing about that is that you have to make sure the quality is there as well.
Yeah.
You know, the customers actually get what they expect when they get to their destination.
Paul, would you concur with this kind of perspective? I mean, you know, you were involved in a lot of this type of work at EasyJet, Flybe. You're positioning it as a regional carrier, very much focused on business travellers, but I guess there was leisure there, and business or leisure, again, people changing how they interact with an airline in booking flights and planning the entirety of their trip. Yeah,
no, I mean, the whole idea about researching and then booking through maybe a different channel you've researched on is, I think, cuts across us all. And I also completely agree that more and more you really have to be mobile and app focused, because that's what people are browsing now. And just have a nice shiny website is no longer good enough. And then, you know, providing the stimulation of the content. So, you know, we're by no means there yet with Flybe, but, you know, look at what happened to EasyJet's website over a 7-8 year period. It turned from being a very simple, clunky booking engine to something which, you know, inspires people. And we're trying to do the same now with Flybe. And it's the whole thing. Whether you're buying a simple point-to-point low-cost flight or a regional flight or a holiday, you still have to give people, you know, the encouragement that they actually want to do this and they want to do it with you, and work really hard to get that hard for pound in their pocket.
Yeah,
so
it has to be easy.
It's very common, but you have to do that ease of use and the inspiring bit on any platform a customer chooses to interact with you on.
Let's just touch now on what I think is going to be Chris's love, aircraft. I mean, at the end of the day, all of you have to use aircraft. All of you are making big changes. Well, I'll save that one for last. Yeah, aircraft-wise, Chris, you got the Dreamliner. How long have you had it now? A couple of years, or even towards 3?
Yeah, it was actually the 31st of May. We touched down after all the delays that we had.
This year?
No, last year.
Last year. And is that aircraft settling into service
Fantastic.
now on a more
Love
reliable basis? Just give us again a quick sketch of what does it mean to you as a business financially, you know, nuts and bolts, and also passenger perception.
I think when I look back, it was 2004 when we started working on the Dreamliner itself, and it was actually only a drawing on a piece of paper way back then, and it was quite a brave decision for us because it was brand new technology. It was so different. And, you know, the entry into service issues are well known. You don't need me to remind everyone of that. But for me, it was the possibility for us to offer something that was going to be quite difficult for our competitors to match at a price that I would say is very difficult to match as well. So the 8th of July, it was the very first 2 flights took off with what I call real customers. Clearly, we'd done lots of flights and lots of testing before that. Yeah. Paying customers, people would actually, you know, they're hard in cash. They were going with their families on holiday to. One went from Glasgow to Cancun, and one went from East Midlands to Florida. And I flew out on the Glasgow-Cancun one. And I can safely say that people told me genuinely that it was the best flight they'd ever had in their life. And I'm sorry, I'm a bit biased, but it did everything that we hoped that it would do all those years ago. It flies our customers further, faster, cheaper, and in greater comfort than any other comparable aircraft. And of course, you can't get them now. You know, I mean, the slots are way out.
Yeah, the order books are what, 4 or 5 years out.
Way out. And it also, let's not forget, it burns 20% less fuel. So not only is that good for the bottom line, it's good for the environment as well. You know?
And then you're going to emulate that cost saving on the shorter haul aircraft by renewing the Boeing 737 fleet with this next generation.
That's well known as well. The MAX order. So the new aircraft start delivering from 2018 onwards. Sorry. But no, we're really, really pleased. And I suppose the real testament was would our customers like it. And, you know, we're seeing customer satisfaction scores in the 90s for what effectively is an aircraft, you know. So it's great. It does reduce jet lag. You feel so much more comfortable on it. There's great entertainment on board. So I hate to say it, but, you know, hopefully the holiday will start as soon as people get on board. It's really, love it, really love it.
And is this aircraft also allowing you to open new destinations?
Yep.
Is that driving it, the economics? Because you're talking about places in Asia and Caribbean, which you haven't served before.
Yeah, initially we used it to replace the routes the 76 flew on the 76 to the Caribbean. We've now gone as far as Mauritius with the 78, which has gone really well. And next winter, for the first time, we're going direct from the UK to Costa Rica. So it's allowing us to open up new destinations, cautiously, obviously, you know. And as long as customers want to fly there, then we'll take them there in great comfort, hopefully. No, delighted we did it. Really delighted we did it.
Now, Paul, you inherited pretty sizable aircraft orders from, if you like, the old Flybe. Aircraft, again, are important tools, different market to you, but you've been making changes recently, haven't you, in terms of planned forward acquisition of the structure of a fleet?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is part of what I was saying earlier about just being very close to your numbers and your costs. And we have a mix of regional jets and regional turboprops, and the turboprops are cheaper. The jets can go further and can take higher loads. But the jets are often deployed on routes which the turboprop could serve cheaper. So having looked at the network, once we'd realigned the network, we found we had too many jets. And so we've managed to swap an order of 24 Embraers for Bombardier Q400s by working with US Airline Republic, who wanted the Embraer 7175s and wanted to politely get rid of or in exchange for some Q400s. So we're taking on board over the next 24 months, 24 aircraft from them, and they're taking our forward order book. So it seems like a nice win-win situation. We get the aircraft which is right for our cost base and our customers, and they get the aircraft that they wanted too. So that was a nice bit of re-engineering that was really born of looking at, you know, what do we actually need and what drives our P&L.
Oh, certainly. And Ryanair, you of course you saved Boeing's bacon maybe, or not. At the time of 9/11, you took a big order for their then new 737-800. You've just got another batch of
we have a phenomenal fleet coming. We did an order for 200 of the 737-800, the current generation aircraft. And then we just ordered a couple of weeks ago another 180, 185 we ordered the old one. We got an order for 100 plus 100 options for the MAX aircraft. So that'll take us well in excess of 520 aircraft towards the end of this decade. And it's massive expansion. It's a great aircraft. It's very straightforward, very reliable. It's a tough old bird.
I saw a photo on your website yesterday, and it looked, by Ryanair standards, you know, rather more sort of acceptable from a passenger point of view. Gone is the yellow, as far as I can see.
Yeah, well, internally there's a nice finishing interior in the Boeing MAX aircraft, but the Boeing 737 is a very comfortable aircraft. It's extremely reliable. It's a great aircraft for good, you know, on-time performance, and almost every aircraft engineer on the planet is able to fix and work and repair a Boeing aircraft. So, you know, we've had great success.
I read as well that with the fuel savings this aircraft brings, and with the greater number of seats, you could generate up to something like 200 million euros a year in additional revenues. Phenomenal figure. It
will be helpful. It'll be much more fuel efficient as well. We work really, really hard, Ryanair, on being quite environmentally friendly. It's counterintuitive to what people think. We would generally get the awards for the most on-track flights in the UK. We get the awards for that. We're very conservative about the way we operate our aircraft. We fly generally at the slower speeds of any of the airlines in Europe. We try and save fuel as much as we can, and we're very aware of noise abatement procedures. So it's a big thing for us, actually, as part of our standard operating procedures. This aircraft will make it easier for us to do that.
Peter, thanks very much. Time's running away with us, but ladies and gentlemen, I know some of you will be itching to ask questions. So if you have a question, do you want to just put your hand up, and We'll get a mic to you. Somebody just about halfway down here, if we could get, as quick as possible, get a mic, because time is so tight. Just introduce yourself and let us know who you'd like to address your question to, please.
My name is Mifsal Ahmed. We operate an airline based from the Maldives to China. And I'm really interested, Chrissy, on this idea of a leisure airline, because a business generally does well when you have a diversified market. But you've sort of decided that it will be a leisure airline.
Holiday, yeah.
Yeah. So how does that work in many ways? Is that profitable because you have other sources of revenue, hotels, or is that just something that as its own deserves an airline?
We deliberately took the decision to make sure that we just looked after our own customers. So that actually has what made the single bit of difference to us, because you said earlier, that we were low cost. I would say that for a long time we were low fares, not necessarily low cost. And the advent of the low cost guys has dramatically changed that. So for us to focus on the end-to-end customer journey, to make sure that we fitted in exactly with what our customers wanted. So, for example, one of the upsides for that is, from a tour operating point of view, we'll set the schedules to what works from a total product point of view, not just a schedule or a timetable that most normal airlines in inverted commas would set. So that has made the fundamental difference. So at every part of that customer journey, we own it, and we call it pass the baton. So no matter where you've booked with us, where you fly with us, and the most precious time is obviously the time you're on holiday, and the whole way back again, that we own that journey, and that's what has been successful for us, thankfully, so far. Just
building on that, Chris, I guess, you don't feel in that sense threatened when you see the size of a company like Ryanair, or when it's growing. You're already massive in a different part of the market.
I think it's two very different business models, if I'm honest with you. And a fantastic set of results this week. That's brilliant, just for business, full stop. So I think that's great. For us, it's a very, very different model. We happen to be an airline, but it's an airline that's part of a holiday company. And that's what I think we've been good at. It's
been your expertise.
But we'd look to learn from things that, Thomson Tues do. The onboard experience for families, some of the extras, some of the way they do the catering on board. They're very, very good at that. I've travelled with them a number of times myself. So we won't hide the fact that we will try and ape maybe some of the features that they have. We introduced a family product, and the general experience on board is very interesting, the approach that they've taken, probably more so than anybody else on the planet. So,
well, you're making more changes, Chris, aren't you, in terms of, especially on the long haul, with like advisors on board, and as you said, family sections. And
at the end of the day, no matter what business you're in, if you listen to what your customers are telling you, and increasingly, because the world is so connected and it's so easy to ask customers what they want, and provided that you can deliver it in a cost-effective way, and you can do that before your competitors, then it usually pays dividends for us. But yeah, I don't think you should ever stop listening to what customers are telling you.
And Paul, do you have sleepless nights about Ryanair, or do you again see yourself in a completely different place?
No, I think part of what we tried to do is to establish our where we sit in the market, and it is different to both of my colleagues here. So it gives us a degree of insulation. Doesn't mean you don't have to be good and innovate. So one of the things we've done recently, we launched our London City services, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. We don't have a lounge at the airport, but we've done a deal with a company called Club Workspace, and we have 8 lounges in the City of London. So actually, you can go and relax if you're on a Flybe flight and meet people actually in London in the lounge, and then go to the airport. So it's again trying to think about why people are using us. It's to go and have meetings and go and do business. And so facilitating that rather than just plonking something at the airport, we think is more useful. So we're always trying to innovate, and that's just an example of that.
I think the one other thing, sorry, I meant to say is, if there's one thing that has impressed me most about our organisation, is that the people who work in it are incredibly passionate, and they care. You said earlier, Peter, that the guys were telling you where you were going wrong. And I think that's one tremendous advantage that we've got. Everybody out there really wants to make sure that we live, and the people are I think they do a fantastic job.
So despite all the heartache that we know is de rigueur for the airline industry of restructuring, people there are motivated.
Well, sometimes we get a bit carried away in talking about, the metal tubes, but there's a lot more to it than that, and it's the people behind it that make it work. you know.
And Paul, has that been an issue for you? Because you had to take Flybe through, well, it was already going through pain, but you had to put much more rapid medicine to get back to the sound position now. Is the workforce there equally fired up? And
no, it did. I mean, you basically have to, I think, front up and be present when these changes go forward. So we went down from 13 bases to 7, for example, and the management team, led by our CEO, went to every single base and personally announced what was happening to people in front of them, rather than sending them an email or a letter or let the local management do it. And then we started setting the strategy of where we're trying to take the airline as phase 2. And listening to people again, and you really have to take people on board. One of the things, just a small thing, the cabin crew was saying, our uniform's 10 years old, we don't feel proud walking through the airport. So we changed the uniform, a small change of that. Now they feel proud, they feel very proud walking through the airport as Flybe. And all of a sudden, enthusiasm's up, and it's because little things you listen and you feedback and you do it, and you get a great response. But the key is just keep on talking, keep on communicating. So personally, I go to one of our bases at least every 2 weeks, if not more, sit in the crew room and just talk to people for a day, and just be available, because all these little issues that become a niggle for your staff on a day-to-day basis, you don't really find out unless you just sit around and have a coffee with them. And then you fix it, and they are listening. And you start to get a virtuous circle. And that's what we're doing. And then that reflects onto the customers, because the staff are happier. And so, it's again, nothing of this is rocket science, but it does take a bit of hard work, and it does take to getting into the detail, so you can actually then find the solutions.
And Peter, you already made that point. I didn't even know you had these work council type meetings.
Yeah.
Well, they would have been banned in Ryanair.
Yeah, they just call it as it is, and they just say, we have to do this. And they actually came up with the ways to do it, and the methods of doing it, and the sizing of doing it. And then once it happened, they embraced it. And because it's just all a bit more chilled out, they reacted. And I guess their personalities can come out a bit more. But a big challenge for the industry is going to be to get the right people over the next 10 years. I think we're certainly finding the general level of education and stuff can be tricky to get the right people now.
Any more questions from the panel? We've got one over here and one here. If we can go as quick as possible, because I am taking it slightly over time. So who's going to get there first? So we'll go with you, because you've got the mic first.
Yeah, hi, I'm Joel from Noosa Resort Noosa, Australia. Just a question about the environment. I heard a few of you talking about the environment. It's good to hear that you have that in mind. I read in a report that Qantas brought out recently in Australia that there's a global negotiation being held about a carbon index amongst the airline industry, not just a voluntary thing, I think. I was just wondering, is that something that's being negotiated on this side of the world? And just briefly, where are you guys up to with it, and how is it going to affect your bottom line?
Just have a quick one-liner from each of you on that and environmental issues.
I think we're very, very strictly monitored in Europe, far, far stricter than anywhere else on the planet. And even actually the structure of the way the charges are made on the aircraft for flying through the air by national governments, by the EU and by local airports, and the noise abatement restrictions, everything. Unless you have the brand new, very fuel efficient, cost efficient aircraft, you actually wouldn't survive in Europe. And that's why you'll generally see the aircraft getting retired from Europe right across Asia, Australasia, and into the States. So we're hammered here on it. Okay. But it's good. You have to raise your game.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, we have the emissions trading scheme, obviously the European emissions trading scheme, and passenger duty, which was originally introduced as an environmental tax. So, there is quite a lot of pressure to operate cleanly and as efficiently as possible, and we do that as well. So in our field of the industry, I think the thing about the emissions trading, it really has to be a global scheme. I think a lot of the European airlines feel very hard done by the fact that this is a European-only scheme, when other people flying in from outside the area don't have to pay or won't pay.
It's a global business.
Yeah.
Chris?
Absolutely, it's a global business, but we've only got one planet, so we kind of have to look after it. So we feel very passionate about that. And Peter mentioned earlier, usually what's good for the environment is good for the bottom line. But that was a low-hanging fruit for us. We tried to, we went there quite a few years ago. Yes, we've saved millions as a result of doing it, but we believe we could actually be doing more, and that's what we're working on. We've got lots of qualifications, IS 14001 as an airline, and on top of that, I can tell you 96.5 grams of CO2 per RPK for our airlines, I think, is probably one of the most efficient in Europe, and we want to keep it there. Because it's not just about how you fly or the equipment, it's what we do with all your waste on board. It's just that total business process, but it's part of what we do.
Thanks, Chris. Victoria.
Victoria Moores with Air Transport World. I did have questions for each of you, but I'll narrow it down just to a question for Peter. Please, could you give us an update on Ryanair's status with Cyprus Airways at the moment? I gather you've been shortlisted? Sorry. Yeah, Ryanair, thank you.
Yeah, I can't probably tell you everything, but there was some certain changes in the whole sales process last week. So we're fully engaged in it. And we're very optimistic that we'll significantly increase our operations in Cyprus quite dramatically over the next 12 months. We think there's a great opportunity for business in that part of the world. We have the fleet coming, and notwithstanding if the Cyprus Airways deal in essence didn't go through, we see ourselves being a big player down in that part of the world over the next 2 or 3 years.
Thanks, Peter. I better wrap it up there, unfortunately. We're out of time. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending the panel this afternoon. Chris Brown from Tues, thanks very much. Paul Simmons from Flybe, also thank you. We look forward to hearing how you develop in the year ahead. Chris, also more about your developing shining new fleet. Peter, thanks very much for giving us the new face of Ryanair. Nice to have you on board today, and we'll see you at your 31st World Travel Market next year. So thanks very much, everybody. We have one more airline session tomorrow morning, 11:30, with Craig Krieger, CEO of Virgin Atlantic. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. See you then.